Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my June wrap-up part 2. In this video I'm going to talk about the 7 books that I finished in the second half of June. And I will insert the clips that I recorded very soon after I finished those books. By this method my reviews about the book are very fresh. I'm hoping that you like this wrap-up style. Today is the 17th of June and I finished another audiobook. I finished the second book in Zoe Beck series by Leighan Dobbs, Dying for Danish. Zoe Beck series is the cozy mystery novella series, and I read the first book last month. And for the prompt of reading a book with a recipe, I decided to read the second novella in the series for the Golden Girls Readathon. In the series, Lacey runs a baker shop and she somehow stumbles across a murder, and she tries to investigate the murder mysteries with the help of her nan, who's in the retirement center, also a president of the ladies detective club there. Lexi is also involved in the chief detective in the police force, who's Jack. In this second story, Lexi delivers her food for the celebration of an upcoming wedding, but she finds the bride murdered just one day before the wedding. Because the groom and the family of the groom are also suspects, she cannot be paid for the catering job, and she decides to find the killer to be paid as soon as possible. At least that's her excuse. First of all, I'm really enjoying this sweet cozy mystery series. I'm kind of liking that the books are not very long, because I think too much sweetness would not fit for a dedicated mystery reader like me. And I also think that it's a getaway for me to be more involved in the cozy mystery series, which many of my dear friends love. I'm liking the slowly developing romance between Lexi and Jack, and my favorite character is of course Nan and the other members of the ladies detective club. I wish there had been a spin-off series of that club. So in summary, like the first book, I really enjoyed listening to this book and gave it 7 out of 10. Today is the 19th of June and I finished 2 books back to back yesterday evening. The first book that I finished was The Power of Dog by Thomas Savage. I actually read this book for mini readathons and readings challenges such as June on Range, and for fulfilling one of the prompts in Golden Girls Readathon, as well as Golden Girls Yearly Reading Challenge. The reason that this book was on my TBR was because it was also a booktuber recommendation. This book was recommended by Gemma. I watched her video in April, but I postponed to read this book because, as I've said before, it would fulfill many of the challenges in June. This book tells the story of 2 brothers who own a ranch in Montana in 1925. The older brother is much more talented, much more educated, and much more clever than the younger brother, George, but he is also much more ruthless. When George decides to marry a young widow, Phil does everything in his power to undermine George's wife, as well as breaking up this marriage. But things turn out much more different than Phil expects. Overall, I really enjoyed many things about this book. The writing was very good, and the story was quite a powerful story. The characters were very three-dimensional, and I really enjoyed reading about their dualities and their conflicts. And also, the book had a perfect length, not too long, boring us with details, or not too short that we cannot understand the powerful message of the book. On the other hand, although I was very much impressed by the general plot structure of the book, I have to say the plot did not move me emotionally. Immediately after reading the book, I watched the Netflix adaptation. I will do a from pages to screen video about this book. But I think it will be online, or this wrap-up video would be online, although I'm filming this clip at an earlier time. So overall, I thought it was a very decent historical fiction book, and I gave it an 8 out of 10. The second work that I finished yesterday evening was a prequel short story of a book that I'm currently reading, The Broken String by Diane Chamberlain. This short story was a prequel to The Silent Sister by the same author. It was advised in the Goodreads sites to read this short story to understand the dynamic between the brother and the sister in The Silent Sister. In this short story, Riley, when 17, flies to her brother's side, who is injured in the war, and remembers some details about their childhood as well as their relationship. So I felt this short story was a very decent short story, and I think it fulfilled the promise of making us understand the relationship between Riley and her older brother. So I gave this short story, The Broken String by Diane Chamberlain, a 7 out of 10. Today is the 23rd of June. I finished the third book in my Big Books But Read project, which was Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I bud read this book with a group of awesome girls: Gaia at Gaia Athena, Amy at Zoe Beck, and Tara at Buzzword Books. I have read Brandon Sanderson Mistborn series before, and I have loved it very, very much. I wanted to get back into Brandon Sanderson books. In this book, we follow the adventures of two sisters, Siri and Viviane. Anne, as the elder sister of Siri, is promised to be married to the God King in the neighboring country of Helendron, and the sisters' country and Helendron are at odds with many things. Both countries want to see this marriage as a peace treaty. But their father decides that he cannot send his favorite daughter, Viviane, to be the bride, but instead sends Siri. While Siri learns how to be a queen, Viviane follows her sister to Helendron and tries to rescue her sister from the evil God King. First of all, this book reading experience was a great experience for, I think, all of us. We loved the book very, very much, and we enjoyed fangirling about the events, the characters, and everything else. Like all Brandon Sanderson books, I loved the writing style of Brandon Sanderson and his very skilled world building. The universe he creates is very absurd when you think about it, gaining power and motion from the colors of objects. But he somehow makes it believable and quite easy to follow. And I think this is an exceptional skill when it comes to fantasy writing. For this book especially, I was very much impressed with the characters. All of the characters were three-dimensional, and they all had contradictions and dualities within them, which made it very, very enjoyable to read about them. I was not bored in a single page. The plot was also very, very exciting. It had elements of romance, mystery, as well as fantasy, which was great considering I love both of those genres. I was only a bit dissatisfied with the ending of the book. I thought the events wrapped up very, very quickly, considering that it was a very lengthy book. Other than that, it was a great book, and I will forever treasure the wonderful character of Light Song in this book. Overall, I gave Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson a 9 out of 10. It is the 27th of June, and I finished another body read with Amy at Zoe Beck again. We body read Vilette by Charlotte Bronte together. Jane Eyre by this author is one of my favorite books, so I was very excited to read another book by Charlotte Bronte. In this book, we follow the adventures of Lucy Snow through her childhood, and most of the book takes place as an English teacher in France, in the town of Vilette. Lucy's relationships, including romantic and friendship relationships, are analyzed very deeply in this classic. First of all, I have to say I was very disappointed by this book. Although there were some things that I really liked about the book, my main problem was that I felt like this book was too long. The same story could have been easily told in 300 pages instead of 575 pages in the ebook edition that I read. And also, I felt like Bronte was so focused on writing very beautiful sentences. She somehow missed the plot in some of the sections of the book. The sentences were indeed very beautiful, and I've enjoyed reading them at the beginning of the book very much, because it was both poetic as well as having wonderful descriptions. But because of those sentences, the plot didn't move, so I had to skim read some of these actually very beautiful sentences to get through the book. On the other hand, I really liked the complexity of the characters. Lucy Snow especially was a very realistic and complex character. Sometimes I identified with her, which made me want to continue the book, especially towards the last chapters. There were some really awesome side characters as well, and the body reading experience with Amy was great. We exchanged our ideas, what we liked and what we didn't like, in detail, and it made the reading of this book much more enriching for me. So overall, I have to admit I was very disappointed by this book, except the body reading experience. And I gave Vilette by Charlotte Bronte a 6 out of 10. Today is the 29th of June, and I finished the audiobook that I was listening, The Silent Sister by Diane Chamberlain. This book was the last month's book in Krista's Patreon book club, and I had it on my audiobook TBR, and I wanted to listen to it, but last month I couldn't do that because of a very busy schedule at work. So I decided to put The Silent Sister on this month's TBR. I previously read the prequel short story of Silent Sister. In this book, Riley comes back to his dad's home after he passes away, and there he meets her brother who had issues with his dad. And as she goes through her father's possessions in his house, learns many things about the family's past, especially about the older sister who killed herself because of depression when she was a teenager. I thought this book was a very interesting historical fiction book, which takes place in 2 timelines, has a very strong element of mystery, and I quite enjoyed listening to this book. I really do like Diane Chamberlain's writing style. It is very easy to follow, yet it is far from simple, and she's a very accomplished writer. I loved some of the characters, especially Riley was a very lovable character, and some of the side characters were also very fleshed out. But unfortunately, I cannot say the same thing for all of the characters. some of the characters were actually quite two-dimensional. And also, although the plot was exciting, it was very, very predictable. I guessed what the big secret was even before I came to the half of the book. This did diminish my enjoyment a bit, and I quite enjoyed the timeline that begins from first years of 1990s, which I of course remember very vividly. So to sum it up, I gave The Silent Sister by Diane Chamberlain a 7 out of 10. Today is the 30th of June, and I finished my last book of the month today, The Widow by Fiona Barton. This book was the book club book for Killer Reads, an online book club hosted by AJ Dunn Reads and Writes. This book follows the events after Glenn Taylor is dead, and the reporter Kate Waters tries to talk to the widow of the deceased Jean Taylor. And in the beginning of the book, we find out that Glenn is hated in the country because of a crime that he allegedly committed, but was exonerated because of a mistake in the police procedurals. And we find out about this event by flashbacks from different timelines and from different points of view who are very much involved in this mystery. Slowly uncover the depths of what really happened layer by layer while we progress in the book. I have very mixed feelings about this book. I really liked the storytelling of Fiona Barton, and her writing was very easy to follow, and it fitted perfectly with the pace of a thriller book. I read this book in only 4 days while I was reading 2 other books, so it was a very quick read. And I really liked the idea of choosing to tell the story by using different points of view from different timelines. It was like solving a puzzle. On the other hand, I did not like the ending of the book. Maybe because I was very much hyped by the really good storytelling. I was expecting a much more surprising plot twist. I have to say I did not like any of the characters with the exception of the police detective. This is the first book in a trilogy. I initially thought that I would not continue with the series because I did not care about the reporter who's the main character in the series. But after going to the Goodreads page and reading the plots of the following books, I decided to give the second book a chance and add this series to my list of ongoing series. To sum it up, I was very much impressed by Fiona Barton's storytelling style and her writing, although I was disappointed by the ending of the book. So I gave The Widow by Fiona Barton a 7 out of 10. So those were all the 7 books that I finished in the second half of June. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, and what did you think of them? And if you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye! As for Turkish word of the day, since my favorite book in the second half of June was Warbreaker, I thought war should be the word of the day. War means savaş in Turkish, and savaş is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day!